Welcome to T.O.L Studios, and today in Lesson 5, we're going to take a look at the major scale that I've been talking about in the last few lessons. But up till now, we've been talking about the C major scale. I'm going to start to introduce a couple, for today, just one more scale. And I'll show you a few things that we've already learned in the C scale so you know how to do the same thing in the next scale I'm going to show you today. But unfortunately, there's more than just two scales. So in the next few lessons, I'll be showing you how to see all your scales. But for this lesson, we're going to take a G scale. Now, if you don't know some of these things I'm getting ready to talk about, go back to Lesson 3, Lesson 4, and review the technique, and also when I've been talking about what a major scale is. But a major scale follows 2 whole steps, then a half step, then it does 3 more whole steps, and then a half step. So like in the key of C, when we started on the C note, we did a whole step up to the D note, meaning we went, so we skipped one, or 2 half steps equals a whole step. And again, review this in the lesson 2 and 3. So whole step, then we did a half step, and then we had 3 whole steps. 1, 2, 3, finished with that half step. Then in the last lesson, I started kind of talking about these little finger patterns, and that's what we're going to kind of mix all this together. Now, if I go to a G scale, we're going to start on a G, but we have to follow the same pattern we just learned in the C scale. Meaning we have to do 2 whole steps, then a half step, 3 whole steps, and then a half step. And I'll show you that's where you start to use some of these black keys. Now, think of it this way. When you're in scales, a lot of times you can have some of the same notes in the same, 2 different scales. It's like what we learned in the C scale. We had a C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and a C. You're going to find out in the G scale you might have a whole bunch of those same notes. We're just starting on a different note. We're starting on the G note. But we have to follow the same pattern. We have to go 2 whole steps, then a half step, then 3 whole steps, and finish with a half step. So let's take a look at this. We're on a G note. We got to go 1 whole step. So we're going to skip, which puts us, there's a whole step. So G is the first note, A is the second note. That's our first whole step. Just like when I was in the key of C, that's what we did. We started with the whole step. So again, we're on the G note to an A, whole step. We have to do another whole step. So A to B, and again we skipped. So, or we're going up 2 half steps, going 1, 2. Same thing, so whole step, whole step. Now we have to do a half step. So B is the 3rd note, C is the 4th note, and that's a half step. So the first 4 notes, G, A, B, C, those are the same letters that we had in our C scale, but we are starting on G and we're going 1 whole step, A to B, 2 whole steps, B to C, half step. So we've got to do 3 whole steps. C to D is our first whole step, and we skipped this. So we went up 2, so 1 whole step. D, have to go up a whole step, or 1, 2. That's our second whole step. So again, we've got from the first note, G to A, 1 whole step. A to B, second whole step. B to C is our first half step. Now we got to go 3 whole steps. So C to D is the first one. D to E is the second whole step. And you might see this now. E to F is not going to be a whole step. That's a half step. But since we've had a G, A, B, C, D, E, F needs to come next, but it can't go here because that's a half step. But if I raise that up here, I'm skipping this. That's a whole step. So we've had to raise the F up. And when we take notes up, or raise them up a little, that's what we call a sharp. I'll show you later on when we go backwards, it's what we call a flat. So meaning if I have a note here and I have a G, if I go backwards I can call that a G flat. If I'm on an F, I can call that an F sharp. So these notes kind of get 2 names, and as I'm going to start talking about scales, it's the scale that tells you when to call this a G flat or an F sharp. I'm going to show you a few of these. If I'm on a G and I go up a little higher, that's a G sharp because I sharped it, I raised it. Or I could call this an A backwards. I lower it, an A flat. So that's the same note as G sharp, A flat. Again, the scale is going to tell you when do you call it A flat or G sharp. I'll go one more or a couple more here, but A sharp or B flat. Now there's a couple weird spots on a piano. B flat, but this could also be B sharp, because when you're flatting or sharping, you're only going backwards one. So like when I was on A and I sharped it, I went up one. If I'm on A and I flat it, I'm going back one. So if I'm right here, everybody sees this, okay, B backwards, flat. But if I go B and go up one, that's a B sharp, even though that's a C note. I can't jump that far because then that makes me go up a whole step. When we sharp or flat, we're making it just go up a half step or up one key, or when we flat, we're going backwards one. So like in this case, that's a D. So if I go D sharp, I'm going to go up one key or a half step. If I go D flat, I'm going to go backwards a half step or back one key. So D flat would be the same as C sharp, but C flat would go backwards one, which is still going back a half step. So that B note is actually, in a scale, we could call that the C flat. So the two weird spots are the B and the C, and the E and the F, because an E backwards a half step is an E flat. But if I sharp it, it's going to have to go up one, which puts me on what we know the F. But there is a scale where you'll find out we sometimes call that E sharp. I'm not going on the weird ones yet. The one I'm starting on was the G scale. So again, to get us up to this note here that I was starting to show you, let's go back over what we started with. We got a whole step from G to A. That's the first one. And again, we went up 1, 2. A to B, 1, 2. That was the second whole step. So whole step, whole step. Or first to second note, G to A, whole step. A to B, second to the third note, second whole step. B to C, third to fourth note, that's our first half step. Now you've got to do 3 whole steps. C to D is the first whole step. D to E is a whole step. And now we got one more whole step, and that is why E to F can't be. That's a half step, so we have to raise it. And that's why we're going to call that F sharp. And then that finishes with a half step, F sharp to G. Now the reason I didn't call that G flat is because I would have had G to A, whole step, A to B, whole step, or 2 whole steps, B to C, half step, C to D, the first whole step of 3 in a row, so the first one, D to E, the second one. But if I went E to G flat, I skipped the letter F. That's why I have to call that F sharp. When we're doing scales, you have to represent every letter. So that's why in this scale we've got G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. And then you'll hear that is still going do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Just like when I showed you the C scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. It just sounds like it's in a different key. So that means if we learn these finger patterns where we're doing this, and then in the left hand we learn to do, this is in the C scale, then that means if I just showed you that we took the same scale pattern from a C to D, whole step, D to E, whole step, E to F, this is a C scale. That's the first half step. F to G, whole step, G to A, whole step, A to B, whole step, B to C, half step, meaning whole step, half, whole, half. That means when we see C is the first note, D is the second, E is the third, F is the fourth, G is the fifth, A is the sixth note, B is the seventh, C, back to what we started on. If I go to the G scale, same pattern. G's now the first note, G to A the second note, whole step. A to B, whole step. B to C, that's the first half step. C to D would be a whole step. Then we're going to do two more in a row. D to E, whole step. E to F sharp, that's the last whole step. And then your half step. So we still got whole step, half, whole, half. Okay? So kind of take this lesson, just digest this in, make sure you get this. That means I'm going to show you in the upcoming lessons, if I go to any letter like a D, we can do the same thing, whole step, half, whole, half, but you're going to find out that we start using more of the black keys. What I'm doing is just showing you like one scale that uses one black key. I'll show you the next scale that shows two black keys, so you can just gradually add them. I'll even kind of help you with a practice technique for a way to kind of learn what I'm showing you as well, a little bit more in depth. But in the next lesson, we're going to take the same G scale, and then I'm going to show you how to take that same finger pattern and how to get used to playing at that F sharp. It means the same thing when we do the left hand. We'll just work on getting the F sharp. So I'll break that down in the next lesson. For the most part, everything I'm showing you when it comes to the scales, when you go to a new scale, you can take the exact same finger pattern we did in the C scale and do the same fingers. When you do get some of these, like 3 and 4, 5 black keys, sometimes depending on the way it feels, you do start with a different finger. I'll explain that as we get there. So for this lesson, just realize what I'm showing you is how you take the same formula. Again, the formula is the whole step, half, whole, half step. And that's what a major scale follows, meaning we're going from the first note to the second note, a whole step, second note of the scale to the third note, whole step, then the third to the fourth note, a half step, then you do 3 whole steps, so the fourth to the fifth note's a whole step, fifth to the sixth note's a whole step, sixth to the seventh note's a whole step, then we finish from the seventh to the back to the what we started on, half step. Now we've taken it to the G scale, making G the first note, did the same pattern. Again, that's going to give us our G to A, whole step, A to B, whole step, or G's the first note, A's the second note, B's the third note, B to C, third to fourth note, half step. Then we do our 3 whole steps. So C's the fourth note, D's the fifth note, that's 1 half step, or whole step, sorry. C to D, a whole step. Second whole step, B to E. E to F sharp would be your third whole step. Then your G, so F sharp to G is a half step. So we still followed the 2 whole steps, half step, 3 whole steps, half step. Have some fun with that. Look forward to seeing you in the